Okay guys, on to the third step here, and I am using the lightening cream from Baco. We're using 1 part of the lightener to 2 parts of our 20 volume developer. So I've already mixed that up, but before I begin, I just want to show you how the root area looks. You can see it's not a clean regrowth application. What I did is I went through and just feathered that a little bit so it looks a little bit more like a shadow root. So that's going to give a nice little seamless blur. So going in, I'm taking a thin slice at the top of the head near the part, using a center part. I'm taking a thin slice and then I'm going to do a little bit of a wider and varied weave. It's okay to have a little bit more of a chunky weave. And we're going to feather that down towards the root. So it is seamless, but you still get a nice bold pop of lightness. I am leaving the very front of my section out to create a little bit of depth between the blonde around the face and the blonde that we're now putting into the hair. So beginning to remove the bulk of the product off of the brush, about 1 inch out, and then working gently towards the scalp and feathering that in for a really soft blended blurred finish. So today I'm actually taking the 20 volume down about 2/3 of that hair. And then I'm actually going to get my 6 volume. I mixed up a fresh batch of 6 volume because you want to make sure you mix up a new batch about every 15 minutes, guys. You only want to mix up enough for 1 application because it's good to keep your bleach fresh, because that's when it is the most potent. So you want to get the most action out of what you're doing. So the bottom third there is the 6 volume developer. And why am I doing this? Well, sometimes hair oxidizes and it gets a little dull looking, or maybe sometimes we have clients that overuse some toning shampoos where it can get dull looking. So if the hair needs a little bit of brightening or you want a little bit lighter of a pop, I go through with a lower volume developer because it's already lightened. You just have to refresh it. So down towards the scalp, and maybe some of the zone 2 might need the 20 volume, and then the end third might need the 6 volume. And I don't always do this every foil. Sometimes I'll just randomly go throughout the head, maybe every other foil or maybe every 3rd foil. So again, you can kind of see it looks a little bit like a barcode, doesn't it? It's a little wider. You know, if you look at a barcode in the back of a product, it'll go wide, thin, wide. That makes for a very interesting and fun finish and highlights. And so we have the depth going in between the foils, which we're going to do in the next section. So you're going to have such a nice variety of finishes to this color correction in 1 step. So this next one I'm leaving alone. I am not putting the 6 volume. So it's helpful that if you do a different fold so that you can see, okay, that one I did not do the 6 volume. So when did I last do the 6 volume? Oh yeah, it was the one before. So maybe this next one I will. Okay, everybody, we are almost completed our first section here. And so just for the speed and your convenience, I did the exact same thing on the other side of the head. So you can see my section goes a little bit behind the ear on each side of the head, and I make a point at the top, so I'm creating like a triangular section in the back. And I left out the tip of the triangle so that I can create a little bit of depth for my guest. It's up to you. If you want to continue with a little bit more brightness, maybe you might want to have a little bit lighter there. The choice is yours. So I'm just going to take you through the last little bit of the lightening process here, continuing as we have previously with the 20 volume through the regrowth and the darker area. And then if you want to brighten the ends, you can use a 6 or 10 volume through those ends. And so much is going to depend on the nourishment and the porosity, condition, the texture of your guest's hair. So one of the reasons why I chose, in the beginning you saw I chose my Baco cream lightener, was because it is so moisturizing, guys, and nourishing for the hair. It has moisturizing oils and beeswax, and it lightens up to 7 levels. It's very hydrating, so I find it great for when I do balayage. I find it, especially in this case, say somebody's coming in with their hair that needs a little bit of TLC after maybe they've been to the beach, maybe they spend a lot of time at their own pool or laying out, maybe they go for walks, maybe they're a runner. You don't know, but sometimes it oxidizes, you get environmental factors. So we just need some balancing out, correcting of blondes heading into the fall. So sometimes that includes hair that is very dehydrated. So I find if I do feel like the hair can take some lightening, that the Baco cream lightener keeps the hair feeling so beautiful. So you can see I'm taking a little bit wider of a weave in this section, and as we continue through, you'll see I take a little bit wider. So after we complete our lightening, so this is going to continue right on to our next section, which is going to be going into zone 2 and correcting those orangey brassy tones with a little bit more of an ash formulation. So guys, we're just going to keep moving. First we did the face frame, then we go on to the root area, and that's going to process for about 30 minutes. We need our roots to process for 30 minutes, but we go through, we do the lightening. I would say in total it probably took me 20 minutes to go through and do this foiling. And then we're going to go right back on through with, so at this point it's probably been on the hair maybe about, I'd say 25 minutes. So really, in essence, when I do grade coverage, I leave it on about 40 minutes to 45 minutes. And so this is a non-progressive color. So the cool thing is that it's not going to get too deep, but now we are factoring in and around the lightener with the 20 volume. So I would say it's probably going to need about at least 20 minutes or so, because we're not going to make it super bright. That's not the goal. We're moving into fall. We want it to have a pretty soft tone to it. So anyway, I'd say about 20-25 minutes once we get this on. So what we're going to be doing is going about halfway through the color with our color correction formulation in zone 2 and feathering that out, and it's all going to finish right about the same time. Finally, we are on to our zone 2. So guys, this is where it gets really brassy. You might see orange, yellowy undertones right outside of the regrowth areas. So old color that is oxidized, and we're gonna go back through and marry it into our regrowth and bringing that through, saturating above and below the hair. And right through the areas that are brassy. So sometimes you may even want to stretch it out, alternating the length in between the foils. So say maybe you go right up to the brassy area in this section, and then the section above it, maybe you come down a little bit lower. So you have really pretty soft blends of depth and coolness throughout the rest of the head. So guys, I'm just going to keep going very carefully up through in between the foils, moving them around carefully, making sure that you clean off your hands in between each section, because you don't want to mistakenly grab a section of hair and then you have a blotch of color where you did not want it to be. So always working with clean hands, making sure you have a dry towel and a wet towel nearby, because sometimes you need a dry towel, sometimes you need a wet towel to really get the get your hands nice and clean. So feathering it on out. You can see I can take a nice wide section, but I am going to use my fingers to kind of zhuzh it through. And just kind of softening. If it looks really pretty to your eye, guys, it's going to look really pretty in the finished product. If it looks blotchy or uneven, it's going to look blotchy and uneven when it's finished. So just continuing to work through the top of the head, and guys, I'm going to keep working through the sides in the exact same way. So maybe at the top of the head, you might not want to come out quite as far, just covering the zone 2 that needs the correction. But a lot of times it's nice to have the depth and longer pulling through of the deeper shade down towards the depth of the underneath. What we're going to be doing once we get through this top section, because sometimes maybe your client wants a little bit more brightening, you can just finish with the zone 2, because we did bring that level 6 volume of developer with the lightener through alternating through the ends. But maybe your client wants that little bit of pop that transitions so beautifully through the ends of the hair, and if you think the ends can take it, just add a little bit more of like a balayage when you're done going through your zone 2. So I'll be showing that to you next. The next section that we're doing is optional. So I decided I wanted a little bit more brightness on those ends that were currently there. So what a nice way to add a little bit of extra pop is to go through and balayage in between the blonde hair that is sticking outside of the foils. So I chose to use a 30 volume developer because, guys, we are at the tail end of this process. It's not going to sit on for super long. It's just going to give you a really pretty nice blend and brightness. So going through in between the foils, I've already done the face frame, and unfortunately my camera was popping on and off that day. So guys, I simply going through in between the foils exactly as I'm doing in the back. You're going to see how I vary my sections. You're going to see a typical balayage where you have a V where you're working the outside of your section with the lightener and leaving depth in between. So what I do, guys, is just make sure that I clip the foils that are above the section that I'm working with out of the way. And also making sure that the section that you're working on is nice and clean. If it needs combing, give it a nice little comb. But here I'm doing a typical V with my 30 volume developer with my cream lightener. And you can see how nice and beautifully that spreads and it stays in place. Where the lightener is brighter and whiter is where you're gonna get the greatest concentration and maximum lift. Here the section's not quite as neat. I just need to comb through a little bit and get those other foils out of the way. So just take a second, set yourself up for success, comb it neat and clean. Take your Framar All Y'all brush, which I am loving for balayage as well because of the feathered bristles. It just makes it so nice to do. Saturating, make sure that the cream lightener is saturated through that hair in between. It's going to give it that extra little pop. So I'm going to let this continue to process, I'd say about another 10 minutes once this lightener is completed before I take everything down. So just to review, we did our face frame foils first with like a 6 or 10 volume because you can see how long it's been on the hair. We went back through, we did our root formulation that will accommodate the level from where you are and where you're going to and the right amount of ash. And if you need a gray formulation in there too, make sure you do that. So we put that root formula from zone 1 between the foils and throughout the head, feathered it out slightly, went back through and did the foils of lightener with 20 volume. Then the next segment that we did was go back through to zone 2 and handle the color correction where it's brassy and alternate whether it's through the zone 2 or we feather it out a little bit for further depth. And this last section that I am finishing on right now is just a balayage, just painting through those ends to give you some added brightness. You don't have to do this, but I decided to do it on this model today. The time has come. We are completely processed. We have a nice amount of depth. We have lightness around the face. I begin pulling out the foils from underneath and then around the face as well. So you can actually see the little bit of depth, and I'm going to show you in a second here. Blending out, because I know it's going to be a few minutes, I make sure that I blend it up towards the root and marry that together a little bit so we have a nice soft blur. So guys, you can see that little bit of darkness in between the lightness where I kind of took almost like a reverse balayage to give the hair some depth in between. See right there, it's like a nice little pop of dark. And then what lays over top is the light. So that's the color correction with the brass that I brought that little bit of ash through and to give you the prettiest end result. So next, everybody, I am going to be using Try Action from the Style Perfetto line from Corral. It is a thermal protectant that gives your hair some beautiful shine. And I also find that it gives the right amount of moisture. Next, I am using my Hyper Volumizing Root Spray just to get a little bit of lift. And guys, I'm going to take you through a few minutes of the blow dry just so you can appreciate the depth and the color that is going on with this hairstyle. So I first begin my blow dry by using my Kerastherapy vent brush to kind of get the hair away from the face, because hair, everybody, it naturally wants to fall down. So I'm getting some lift and smoothness first. Then I go in to build some body once the hair starts to get a little bit more dry with my Olivia Garden ceramic and ionic brush. I love this to build some body into the hair. So you guys can see what I first do is work in small sections, building up volume around the root and smoothing out that hair, taking it in different directions, over directing up, and then giving the hair a nice little twist and rolling it off my brush, kind of in a spiral fashion, and releasing it. And that helps to give the hair, you'll see right here, I'm going to give the hair a little bit of a twist in the final steps here. So here you go. You guys can see the finished face frame is a little bit brighter, and the transition throughout the head is just seamless. So guys, I had a great time showing you. I hope you had fun watching. I'm going to be dropping below products so that you can do this for yourself. Take care, guys, and we'll see you soon. Hey guys, I know many of you are going to be asking. Yes, I did tone the hair, and I did it with the Baco 10.12. That's a level 10 ash violet. It gives you the most beautiful pearl blonde that is a nice soft transition into the fall and gives the hair such perfect cool balance. So love you guys. Thanks for your time. I hope you enjoyed.